very creatively from that blank piece of paper and how do we want to accomplish it, and then it's really to them a tactic of is it for-profit or non-profit. So here's the spectrum. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I think it's fairly explanatory. Traditional nonprofits on this side, traditional for-profits. But I think the area that most of what we're trying to talk about over the next 2 days are those boxes in the center there, which I like to call the sweet spot. So, social enterprises and social responsible businesses, and we'll see on another slide some of the motivation on how you fit within this spectrum. So, is it mission-centric? So, some of the restaurants that I talked about, especially when we talked about Homegirl, it is definitely mission-centric because even though it is making money to operate their business, their social enterprise, but really the social enterprise is all about how they're using a restaurant and baking to help pull these girls out of gangs, give them purpose in life, give them support and counseling and nurturing and developing skills at the same time. Or it could be mission related, which is, it's sort of a combination of, yes, it ties in with what we're trying to accomplish, but we're also trying to raise money for other programs that we're doing. And then it could be unrelated to mission, and I think probably the easiest example of this is if it's a nonprofit organization that, say, is an art museum, but they have a gift shop. Well, the gift shop is really unrelated income that is being used to help pay for the cost of the museum. There's also financial strategies, income diversification. Traditional nonprofits, every year, what is it? A handout. Please give us money to do what we need to do. If you can diversify your income, whether it's coming from traditional philanthropy, could be government grants, along with earned income through social enterprises, it gives you much more balance. It helps with self-sufficiency, and it can be a whole lot more efficient. There's a variety of methods to income generation: fee for service, products, services, membership dues, unrelated business activities like we mentioned, the museum, gift shop. But then there's other ways too, tangible and intangible assets. Do you have facilities that have excess space that you could rent out to bring in extra money? And then, your investments. And here it says investment dividends, but even how do you invest those dollars could be a force for good. Program areas. This is just a small list, but everything from economic opportunities and market development and employment, which is so important for the Ministry of Labor. All of these and many more. But I put this slide up here because I think all of us are excited about social enterprises and what they can do. But these are really some warnings, and this doesn't